Hey, soccer fans. Nick back with the Feed the Fire podcast, where we're talking Chicago Fire and Major League Soccer. It's been about 10 days since I've recorded an episode. Been very busy at work, getting ready for the holidays and year end. Been very busy at home, doing some of our family holiday traditions, going out to JoJo's Shake Bar, going out to Holiday Magic at the Brookfield Zoo, and then immediately going for Aurelio's Pizza afterwards while we got to watch the Bears game at the place. So we've got all our little holiday traditions that keep coming, that keep popping up, that we're continuing, that the kids love, that my wife and I enjoy. But now it is back time to talk soccer. And there is so much to talk about when it comes to the Chicago Fire and Major League Soccer. So much is happening this offseason, whether it's calendar change, division realignment, big stars rumored to be coming to the Chicago Fire, Robert Lewandowski, whether it's the SuperDraft that's taken place, and just all the different transfers that are going on around the league in this offseason. Miami hasn't slowed down. They're making moves. They are bolstering where they were at one of their weakest points. They're about to sign, if they haven't already, signed Dane St. Clair, Minnesota's top goalkeeper, one of the best goalkeepers in the league over the last several years. So there's so much going on in Major League Soccer and with the Fire this offseason that what I'm going to end up doing for this is I'm going to split this into two episodes, another back-to-back holiday roundup, MLS Chicago Fire holiday roundup, and this is part one. And in part one, we are talking about the biggest transfer news surrounding the Chicago Fire at the moment, and that is Robert Lewandowski, the great Polish striker, the man who has scored at the highest levels across Europe and in the World Cup. He is linked to the Chicago Fire, and not just linked. The Fire own his discovery rights, and the Fire have had talks with him. Berhalter was in Spain meeting with him and his people in Barcelona, and by all accounts, it was a very positive and productive discussion. So let's get into that a little bit more, and then we'll dive into the MLS SuperDraft a little bit after. Now, first up, the Robert Lewandowski news. The Polish striker, who's currently at Barcelona, is going to be out of contract at the end of this season. He is 38 years old. He's 37 or 38 years old. Let me see. I think I got it in my notes somewhere here. Yep, 37 years old, and he'll turn 38 next August. But he is still performing at an extremely high level. Unfortunately, though, his minutes have been limited at Barcelona. I think I saw somewhere that he's only played about 42% of the available minutes up until recently. So whether that's him falling out of form or him falling out of favor, can't be too sure. But the fact remains, he's playing a lot less soccer, which is good for his next club because he still does have a lot of game left in the tank. And if things continue to go well for the Chicago Fire and Robert Lewandowski in terms of this partnership, in terms of this potential free agent signing, then it's going to bode well for the Chicago Fire to get a star who's coming off of a bit of a restful season. Now, like I said, he's out of contract with Barcelona at the end of the season. But what's nice from what I've been kind of gathering by what's been reported and what's been shared on social media, this doesn't seem like it's some sort of a short-term deal for him just to kind of stay in shape for the World Cup, a la like a Gareth Bale. Now, of course, it wouldn't come to fruition, until the deal wouldn't come to fruition until next summer, so the World Cup might not be an issue for him in terms of staying in shape, coming to MLS to stay in shape. But again, it doesn't seem like it's some sort of short-term stopover before he can go back over to Europe or go off and do something else in his career. It seems like he does want to be a part of the Chicago Fire, and the Fire are planning on him being a part of the team for at least a season or two. So what does that mean for his contract, though? Well, he's a free agent, so the Chicago Fire are going to look out. They're not going to have to pay a transfer fee for it. But then let's look at the money. And more than likely, he's going to be a designated player. Unless somehow they do some of this MLS roster trickery where they can get him as a maximum TAM player, but then guarantee him so much money in other avenues of revenue and other vehicles of revenue, such as endorsement deals, sponsorships, maybe housing allotments, all these other things that are out there that we have seen the league really shift to try to do with the advent of Messi, where his base salary is only so much, but his actual income is 10 times that because of every sponsorship deal out there. Or like with Messi getting a percentage of season pass sales and jersey sales, I'm sure that the Fire and MLS would be able to work something out like that with Lewandowski, giving him a percentage of either season ticket sales, giving him a percentage of his jersey sales, or making sure that they're securing sponsorships for him throughout the United States, especially in Chicago, where there is such a large Polish community. And if I recall correctly, Chicago has the largest population of Poles outside of Poland, other than Warsaw, I believe. So this would be a great fit for him culturally. Again, being surrounded by people of his heritage, but on top of it, coming to a very multicultural city like Chicago, coming to a city that really is growing into a soccer city from an MLS standpoint, from a player recognition standpoint, but still not to the point where he's going to get mobbed every time he wants to go out and buy some groceries or anything like that. It's a very family-friendly place, and I don't know his family situation. I'm assuming he's married with some kids at this point, but I haven't checked that out yet. But this would be a good lifestyle place for him as well to come towards the end of his career. But again, not a retirement move, not a final paycheck, but to be part of a Chicago Fire team who is taking that next step towards trophy contention, bringing in a winning attitude, bringing in a championship mindset to instill into some of these younger players like a Sergio Orahel, like a Jay Davila, like a Leo Barroso, right? Get that championship mentality in these guys and show them what does it take to win trophies. Now, we've seen a little bit of that. Jack Elliott, who has won the Supporter Shield with Philly and played in an MLS Cup with Philly. He brings a little of that. Joe Bamba, who has won a French league title several years back, he can bring a little of that, but no one to the level of a man like Robert Lewandowski. And just as a reminder, let's see, he has won the Bundesliga. Gosh, how many times between Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich? He's won La Liga a few times with Barcelona. He was striker of the year in 2021 and 2022. That's a worldwide trophy. Let's see, what else can we pull up on his resume here? Played in Euros, played in World Cups, captained his national team. Like, that level of play and that level of player is something that the Chicago Fire, I don't think, have ever had. And so for him to bring that part of his resume, I guess, his pedigree to the Chicago Fire would be absolutely outstanding in terms of development and culture for this club. Now, one thing to keep in mind, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Lewandowski has indicated he is in no rush to sign a contract. He's focused on finishing the season with Barcelona and giving everything he has to his current season and his current team. So if this deal is going to happen, it is not going to happen until the end of the Barcelona season, again, when he does become a free agent, but also when he is mentally ready to sign this deal. So it's not going to happen until next summer, and we're probably going to hear tidbits, over the course of the next several months about news that's going to come up with him, meetings that are going to occur. So just keep your ear to the news sources and keep your ear here at the Feed the Fire podcast, as we'll talk about anything that we catch wind of as well. So that's another thing that we're going to have to slow walk this. But remember, it's already been a slow process. According to Alex Calabrese over at Men in Red 97, Lewandowski has been a long-term target of the Fire, which would explain why they still have his discovery rights. And the relationship was established several years ago. So it really is not much of a surprise that they're continuing to have talks with him. It's just now, with the fact that his contract is ending with Barcelona, the talks have progressed, and this is a very real possibility. By the way, sidebar here, it is so funny to see European soccer fans commenting across social media about what are discovery rights and how ridiculous of an American concept this possibly is. Well, I think that's so dismissive of, oh, you Americans and your soccer. I think it is extremely dismissive and just shows a lack of understanding and a lack of wanting to understand that the MLS still is relatively a new league at 30 years here, and we still need to preserve parity. The ghosts of the collapse of the NASL are still prevalent in the minds of Don Garber and the other owners. And as Garber has been quoted saying recently, like, these are owners who are investing in Major League Soccer. They are not buying teams in order to make money on it. They're investing in the soccer, and yes, of course, they're trying to make money on it. I misspoke that. But if you look at the European teams who've been around for over 100 years, who have established infrastructure all the way down to the youth systems, and an established market globally, those guys know, those European owners know, they're getting into it for a business aspect, and that promotion and relegation are part of that business, and that buying and selling big name players are part of that business, and that they've got 100 years plus of history there, knowing that their club's not going to go anywhere, barring some sort of extreme financial unfair play kind of a deal there, right? Whereas in MLS, again, it's 30 years. We don't have the infrastructure yet for a lot of these teams. Like, there's still a number of teams who just started academies within the last few years. There are still teams building their own stadiums, like the Chicago Fire, New York City, New England Revolution getting a new stadium. Like, we're still seeing that from just the stadium perspective. So the fact that we need these discovery rights shouldn't come as a surprise in order to keep parity within the league. And I know a lot of people are saying it prevents one club from buying talent, and that is a true point, but I don't think that's the main point of having these discovery rights. I think, at least on a global scale, because there are enough talented soccer players globally where, yeah, Miami, okay, if they can get Messi, Suarez, Neymar, DePaul, and one or two other guys on their rosters, well, you can still have another team like in LA or like in New York, or whichever owner wants to spend the money, can still go out and sign a Son or a Lewandowski, or there's still enough global talent out there where I don't think the discovery rights were meant to prevent the global talent. I think it was meant to protect the local talent, especially because of the U22 initiatives, of the homegrown initiatives, that those kind of player designations give teams and clubs a lot of roster flexibility. So it's the discovery rights that you place on your homegrowns and your local talent that actually, I think, is the biggest reason that these clubs can now develop academies and develop U22 players for either first team action or sale and further income. So I think that's where the discovery rights really prove their parity. That way, Chicago's not going over to Ohio and just poaching a bunch of kids from Columbus and Cincinnati and getting them in our academy over here. So those homegrown rights those discovery rights are there, or even homegrown rights, if you will. And maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but I think that's the best way it works. And we even saw that in the NHL for a long time. There was the 50-mile radius rule, where if there was a player who lived within 50 miles of an NHL franchise city, then they got to have the first crack at it. They had first rights. So it's not a totally American soccer unique kind of a thing, and I think it does help the parity, and I think it does provide some roster flexibility, like I said, in conjunction with homegrowns and U22s. So something to keep in mind as you talk to any of your Euro snob soccer friends that are out there. All right, let's also take a look. Oh, some other notes here that I wanted to pop out. Fabrizio Romano also put out some news about this. There were rumors that Lewandowski, along with Timo Werner, were also on Inter Miami's target list, but he has reported that is not the case, that Miami is not pursuing them, and in fact, Timo Werner has been linked with the San Jose Earthquake, so keep in mind what that could possibly bring to Bruce Arena and San Jose. Now, let's say this deal goes through. Let's say we get Lewandowski, he's signed, he comes in next summer, midway through the 2026 season. What does that mean for the Chicago Fire roster? We have a star striker. We have our true number 9 in Hugo Kuipers. So, if you bring him on, how do you handle this? Some people have said, I don't want to see a 37, 38-year-old star international star come over if it means we're getting rid of Hugo Kuipers. So can both be true? Is there a plan for this? Now, I haven't seen anything out there, but I have heard the phrase, you sign the star and figure out the details later. So if they're going to get Lewandowski, if they're going to get a guy whose pedigree I just waxed and waned on about, then you figure it out later. So what could the Fire do if you have Kuipers and Lewandowski? If you have them both, you could do a two-striker setup. Could you do a 3-5-2 with it? Or what was it, like a 5-3-2, and then you have your two wingbacks just running up and down, 3-5-2, 5-3-2, whatever it is. Could you do that? Technically you could, and theoretically you could, but I don't think practically it would work. And here's where I think the problem is with having both Hugo Kuipers and Robert Lewandowski on the pitch at the same time, is they're both a very similar kind of striker. They are a true number 9. You want to find them as your target. You want to provide them service. They can score with their head, with the left, with the right foot. They can score any way, set pieces, crosses, whatever the case may be. So I think that they're very similar in that. So what I think would happen, and I'm projecting, assuming that Lewandowski does get signed, is that he comes in mid-season. The Fire finished the 2026 season with both Lewandowski and Kuipers, and they evaluate, can Lewandowski start and play the full 20, by that time it'll be the 2027 season, which, by the way, with the recent calendar announcement, you're going to have a shortened 15-game 2027 season before the summer break, and then you start the fall 2027-2028. So you know what? It might be real worthwhile having Hugo Kuipers and Robert Lewandowski to make a potential trophy run in 26, to make a run at that 2027 shortened season trophy, asterisk or not, I don't care, a trophy's a trophy, and then you can give them both a break and evaluate where they're at prior to the start of the 2027 into 2028 season. And if Kuipers continues his run of form, we saw how great of a striker he was in Belgium. We saw what he did this year with the Chicago Fire with an actual tactical identity, proper service, and productive service, a volume of service, that he was, leading the Golden Boot race for a portion of the season and being top 3 for a long portion of the season, so that he could be a valuable sale piece back to a top tier, a top club in Europe, or maybe a kind of top club in a middle tier, like someone who would go back to the Netherlands or back to Belgium or back to maybe even Portugal. I don't know if we'd want to sell him to Portugal though, but like some of those leagues, or potentially to a mid to low table Italian side who just needs some goals. And the Fire could then get a good return on investment, and hopefully by then, and this is something they've been needing to do throughout the course of these 2 years, while playing Kuipers and Lewandowski, developing that third striker, developing that homegrown striker, like Pareba, or like a Shukaluk, or a Dean Bolts, or let's see, who else is on the roster? That's who's on the senior roster right now. Or they go out and get another young star striker, like someone in the mold of a Yorgos Koutsias, who they can mold into the way they want to, the player they want to. So I think that's what happens. I think they hold on to both of these guys through assuming Lewandowski does sign and come over in the summer of 26. They hold on to him and Kuipers for the 2026 season, the shortened 2027 season, and then depending on the development of any strikers or the signing of any new strikers, you make a decision whether to move Kuipers at that point, or however long the deal for Lewandowski is. If it is just a year to finish the 26 and get into the short 27, or also through 2028. We'll have to see what kind of deal that is. Maybe there's an option tacked onto it, which I would assume would happen. Just to protect the Chicago Fire from any effects of the age of a player, because at some point everyone's going to hit a wall, and even though Lewandowski's looking pretty good with Barcelona for the minutes he's playing, that wall's coming up, and you just don't want to hit it when you just sign him to like a 3-year deal or something like that. All right, what other notes do I have on here? That's my take on Lewandowski. I would love to see it. I'd love to see it happen. I think it would be great for MLS. I think it would be great for the Chicago Fire. It immediately puts the Fire in the same conversation as Inter Miami signing Messi, obviously Messi's his own category, but you get the idea. Puts them into the conversation of LAFC signing Son, puts them into the conversation of like a Vancouver signing Mueller. Like that's where the Chicago Fire are. Or even a couple years back when the Red Bulls signed Forsberg, it was like he's going to take us to the promised land. And matter of fact, he brought them to an MLS Cup final where they eventually lost to the Galaxy. But then still, you've got the Galaxy who are signing guys at that time like a Peck, a Paintsel, and a Pooch, and that's just elevating the Galaxy. Now they hadn't been able to sustain it, but you see now the Fire in that kind of category of team with this kind of status of player. So I would be great for it. I would be happy to see it. I think it'd be great. I'm on board with the Lewandowski signing if they can make it happen. Do I want to see him occupy a DP spot? If they can get him for a max TAM deal for a year or two, maybe do some creativeness, dancing around these rules, getting him all the extra guaranteed money and sponsorships. So for him, they're selling him a package. They're not selling him just what's on paper in the contract, and maybe that'll give them a little roster flexibility. And gosh, I'm sure if they say, hey, Robert Lewandowski, if you can bring an MLS Cup to Chicago for the first time in almost 30 years, and doing it as a Polish international superstar, you're going to never have to buy a beer or anything in the city of Chicago for the rest of your life. So again, they got to sell him on the package, not just on the contract. And I think that it would be something amazing to see here in the Chicago soccer community. All right, the next thing I wanted to talk about would be our SuperDraft. The MLS SuperDraft did occur, and the Chicago Fire had 3 picks in the MLS SuperDraft. Only one in the first round, though. The other 2 in the later rounds, they did trade away. So they only actually made 1 pick. And who did they select? The Chicago Fire selected Jack Sandmeyer with the 18th pick of the first round. And again, their 48th pick they traded to Salt Lake, and their 78th pick they traded to Houston. So here's the announcement on Jack Sandmeyer, the new Chicago Fire draft pick. On December 18th, 2025, the Fire selected defender Jack Sandmeyer from the University of North Carolina with the 18th overall pick in the 2026 MLS SuperDraft. So very good soccer pedigree coming from North Carolina. Sandmeyer, age 23, played the 2025 season as a grad student at North Carolina, logging 1,809 minutes and starting all 20 matches in the midfield. So even though he was selected as a defender, he played as a midfielder. He's a defensive midfielder. He also played some center back in his prior college experience. But playing primarily as a defensive midfielder with North Carolina, he helped the defense finish with a .85 goals against average and 8 clean sheets. Not bad. He scored 1 goal during the season, a bicycle kick in a 2-2 draw against North Florida. There are clips floating around out there. By the way, when you think of bicycle kick, you think of acrobatics, height, power. Technically, this was a bicycle kick, but it wasn't any of what I just mentioned. It was pretty much just him falling backwards and swinging his leg up over his head. Got the form down, got off the ground a little bit, but he did score. He did score to help them earn the draw there. The release also says that his contributions toward 8 clean sheets helped him earn third team All ACC selection, 1 of 4 Tar Heels to earn conference recognition. Prior to North Carolina, Sandmeyer played his senior season at the University of San Diego, starting 19 matches. He scored twice for the Toreros, including an 82nd-minute goal in the NCAA tournament to give the University of San Diego a second-round upset victory against number 10 Duke, taking out one of the big soccer programs there. He began his collegiate career at the University of California, Davis, UC Davis, before returning to his hometown of San Diego. So the little stats here. Jack Sandmeyer, defender, born October 18th, 2002. Most recently played with the University of North Carolina. He is 6'6", originally from San Diego, California. And let's get back to my show notes. Not only is he 6'6", he's 185 pounds. So he is a big boy, and I'm sure he's got a little bit of room to grow and put on a little more muscle once he gets into the professional environment here in Chicago. Now, what are my expectations for this signing. First of all, it's a great signing, or it's a great draft pick by the Chicago Fire. They recognize that they have had holes in the defense. They recognize that you've got 29 and 30-year-old center backs in Joel Waterman and Jack Elliott. And again, we talked about that wall. Who knows when they're going to lose their step or going to hit their wall. So this is great building up for the future. I think he's going to fit in very well. I expect that he does get to sign with CF2 and get to know the club a little bit, know the professional setting, even though he has played at a major college program. It is still a little different coming in and working with guys who've been professionals for as long as some of these players on the Chicago Fire have been. The aforementioned center backs, not the least. So I expect him to sign a CF2 contract. Who knows? Maybe he does sign a first-team contract. But I would expect a CF2 contract, and I would expect him to get a lot of those short-term, to max out those short-term call-ups. I'd expect him to do a lot of training with the senior team. And again, I also like this pick because he's played at high levels and in high-stakes situations. If you think back, if you look at the NFL comparison, I forget which coach it was. Was it the Jimmy Johnson method? I forget which great NFL coach it was. Said that they will never draft a quarterback who hasn't started for 2 years, who hasn't won a big game, who doesn't have a winning record. Like there were certain measurables of performance that this coach used to kind of put to extrapolate it back. Sorry, I'm not explaining it very well. But there were certain measures of a career performance in college that translated these quarterback skills and characteristics to a successful NFL quarterback. And so I think you see a little bit of that here with this pick. He's played at a top program. He's played in NCAA tournaments. He's played for 2 schools in California and 1 in Carolina, while maintaining his course load. There's no guarantees that he's going pro, so he is maintaining an academic course load. So he's gotten out of his comfort zone. So I think he checks a lot of those similar boxes to someone who will have what it takes to play at a professional level, at the very least, at least in the mindset. And obviously, you're not going to be starting a full season for North Carolina if you don't have the skill set. Obviously, the collegiate game isn't the pro game, and MLS Next Pro isn't Major League Soccer. So again, I expect him to start with CF2, get comfortable with the Fire. I know Berhalter likes to ease guys in, but also he's not afraid to give guys chances if he thinks they're ready for it. See Christopher Cupps last season, another center back. So I would expect him to start with CF2, ease his way into the program, get some of those short-term call-ups, get on the bench for some first-team games, and see where he goes from there. But if you remember the Chicago Fire's last SuperDraft pick, Brian Dowd, goalkeeper out of Notre Dame, he's no longer with the club. So maybe that's just a product of positioning. Maybe the Fire thought they were going to end up transferring Chris Brady at some point, or just bringing in Brian Dowd to either have as an asset that they could move and gain something back for, or someone that they could put in the competition pipeline and keep pushing the goalkeepers that are already in the Chicago Fire system to improve. But I don't think that's the case when you've got a guy who is listed as a defender, who plays midfield, D-mid, especially in a Chicago Fire squad that could use the defensive help. You also can look at it from a perspective of this guy can play D-mid, so he is going to push the current midfielders on this roster to continue to improve, like an Orhel, like a Davila, and someone who's going to be right there training and learning from Anton Saletros. Fantastic stuff. But looking at the current Fire roster, the center backs on the roster, Jack Elliott, Joel Waterman, Bekele Boazi, Christopher Cupps, Sam Rogers, and in a pinch, Mauricio Pineda could drop back there. So you can see how he would fit in along the next line of defense, literally the next line of defense, with or after Chris Cupps and Sam Rogers. If you want to look at the defensive midfielders, right now we've got Jay Davila, Sam Williams, Kellen Acosta, Sergio Orhel, and Robert Turdayan. Now, we'll put a little asterisk next to Turdayan. He's 15. I don't think he's turned 16 yet. I don't expect him to be on the first team or vying for a spot with the first team. But we could see Acosta move out or take a different role. We could see Williams possibly being moved. I know we just brought him in recently from Red Bulls just to try and kind of shore up a little depth on the roster there. We also have Seletros now, and Franco hopefully coming back from injury about midway through next season. So Sandmeyer is going to have to fight for a first team spot, but I don't think that the Chicago Fire are going to be in a rush to get rid of him if he doesn't make the first team in his first year with the organization. And again, we even saw the new change in philosophy with the Fire at the academy level, where they are now giving kids who make the academy a 3-year commitment. That it's not a year-to-year thing, providing uncertainty. That it is a 3-year commitment to them. So I think that kind of philosophy will play into this a little bit. All right, let me see if I got any other notes that I want to relay about Jack Sandmeyer. But at the end of the day, I think it's a great pick. It's an area of need for the Fire. If you follow the old adage, grow defense and sign attack, this is another way you can grow the defense. And by the way, a lot of people still get down on the MLS SuperDraft. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's great. Not only is it a little bit of an Americanism in that's entering a very European, South American sport. I love the Americanness of a draft, a collegiate draft for these pro teams. And I think it's never going to be as big and as crazy as, say, the NBA or NFL draft. And I hope it's never going to be as long and ridiculous as the Major League Baseball draft. But I do think there's an American quality to it, which I like. I do think that it is another pipeline for clubs to find talent. That way you can have a single scout scouting the draft versus having a whole scouting network across the country of college soccer. And again, you want to be able to cast a net. You want to be able to cast a wide net when you're recruiting, when you're signing, when you're scouting, all that sort of thing. So I think it's a fantastic institution of MLS, and I hope they keep it and continue it. Just to kind of recap a little bit more from the draft, DC United held the first pick. They selected defender Nikola Markovic from NC State. Dallas had the second and third picks. They selected forwards Ricky Lewis, Georgia Southern, and Nicholas Simmons from Virginia. Kansas City with the fourth pick took midfielder Kwaku Agibeng from Clemson. Orlando City in the fifth pick selected forward Harvey Sarajian from Wake Forest, another Blue Blood soccer program. The Rapids in sixth selected Mamadou Bilo Diop, who actually was already in their organization, but I guess due to some wacky type of MLS rights rules, they actually had to select him to guarantee his rights remained with them. St. Louis City picked seventh, signing Zach Lillington, defender, UC Davis. DC United selected eighth, selecting Richie Amon, a forward from Washington. Orlando City picked again in ninth, taking Nolan Miller, defender from Michigan. And to round out the top 10, the Rapids selected Mitchell Baker, a forward out of Georgetown. So the first round consisted of 30 picks, every team getting a pick. The second round was also another 30 round. Let's see. Third round was the final round. So there were 90 picks made during the course of this year's draft. And what do we notice? Were there any trends? Well, if you look at the top 10, you saw defenders, forwards, midfielders. You saw a variety of positions being taken in the draft. The first goalkeeper selected, though, was FC Dallas, taking Nicholas Herseg from Vermont at number 16 overall. So Dallas had a bunch of first-round picks. Let's see, 2, 3, 16, and yeah, they had 3 first-round picks. So you could see Dallas, if you buy into their philosophy of, or agree that their philosophy is to develop young local talent and homegrown talent and talent from the draft, then absolutely it fits their model. That they had 3 picks in the first round, they had 2 more in the second round, and then who in the third round? 1, and then 1 pick in the third round. So they had 6 picks in this draft, and I'm sure they're all going to get a shot in the Dallas system. As far as the colleges you see, it's mostly your larger schools. However, you see Georgia Southern getting a pick in at second. You see UC Davis, but you are seeing a lot of the larger, like the ACC or Big Ten schools, SEC schools in with some of these players. I will point out Vancouver Whitecaps picked Daniel Hugo with the 29th pick. He's a forward out of High Point University. And right before him, a player from Grand Canyon University went. So there's really no specific, there's really no blueprint for it. And in fact, another player from High Point went to Salt Lake in the second round. So maybe they probably had a great year the way things are looking here. Seattle and Portland universities also had picks. Had players picked. They have a long line along with Akron, who had some players picked in this draft, as being some of those smaller schools with excellent soccer programs. So I'm trying to see if there's anything else that's jumping out of me at this list. Just from a local flavor, there was a player. Here we go. Edward Nis, who I believe is Belgian and originally from Europe. He was selected by Dallas with the 40th overall pick, but attended Illinois Chicago. So I think that's about as local as we're going to get for colleges and universities here. I haven't done a full breakdown of all these guys to see exactly where they're from. We do see a handful of selections from Indiana University. Again, another traditionally great college soccer program. All right, moving on to our last little bit, just some other Chicago Fire moves that I want to keep everyone apprised on. Former CF2 captain Diego Conix has joined the Canadian Premier League permanently. He signed a 2-year deal with Pacific FC. Last season, he was on loan from CF2 from Chicago to Valor FC. And is now officially joined Pacific FC. So wishing him all the best of luck in the Canadian Premier League. I would love to see him eventually get back into the Chicago Fire fold in MLS. The kid's got a lot of promise and played really well for CF2. But good luck to him in the Canadian Premier League. Other little bit of news, Chris Mueller, who just went back and got his degree from the University of Wisconsin. Check out his social media pages. Very proud of it, as he should be. He is set to rejoin the Chicago Fire on their supplemental roster for the 2026 season. And that is based on the financials for the new contract that he has. So if you're completely cutthroat, if you're going to be the sole business guy, if you're going to be the Ebenezer Scrooge pre-4 Ghost, if you count Marley, visit, then you're like, we should cut him. We should save the roster spot for a developing player, whatever. The Fire don't operate like that. They see a devotion to their players. They see a responsibility to their players, and they're not just going to cut Chris loose because of his heart condition. They were able to renegotiate his contract. He continues to play with the Fire to receive the medical treatment and care that he needs, and still has the potential to get the pericarditis under control and get cleared and come back and play in Major League Soccer. So you're also keeping a guy on your roster not only because you're doing the right thing as an organization for your players, but also you're keeping a guy who has tons of MLS experience, who knows the area. Again, grew up in Schaumburg, played for, was it Sockers FC? I forget what local club he played for. But a guy who also had that brief stint over in Scotland and can bring a little of that European experience, or maybe even counsel some of these younger guys on the team. If you follow Chris on social media, you see he's very, very thoughtful, very introspective. Is that the right word? Very philosophical in a lot of what he posts, and could be a good influence for some of these younger players and a good stabilizing locker room guy as well. So happy to see him find a spot with the Fire for 2026. Wishing him nothing but the best in 2026. And I'm wishing you all of my listeners out there, whether it's on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, wishing you all the best in 2026. The year is ending. And by the way, we have recorded on Feed the Fire, we've recorded over 200 podcast episodes. I think we're approaching 210 with this one. We have been streamed and downloaded in gosh, I want to say over 50 different countries. Obviously the bulk of our listens are coming in the US, Canada, and the UK, but we're getting listens from Denmark and Belgium and Greece and all over the place too. And hopefully we're getting some more listens from South Africa. And by the way, for our South African friends, I would love nothing more than in like 2 seasons to see Mbokazi and Sandmeyer back there anchoring the back line with Chris Cupps and having those three guys win a trophy for the Fire before going on to great things overseas. I think that would be an amazing dream. I don't know if it's going to happen just given the business aspects of the game and the player desires and things, but man, can you imagine that, Fire fans, in 2 years from now, where we have a 22-year-old Mbokazi, a 25-year-old Sandmeyer, and a 19, 20-year-old Chris Cupps as your three starting center backs for the Chicago Fire, going out and anchoring one of the best defenses in the league and bringing home a trophy. That would be absolutely nuts. I think that would be wild. But again, thank you to everyone who tuned in and listened in 2026. It's so much fun being able to talk soccer, to talk MLS and Chicago Fire, to have you all listen, and have everyone interact as well. Emails from Ryan, from Donnie, from Israel, conversations with John Donovan that he doesn't put on air. He hasn't recorded anything in a while. John, you're always welcome to. But to be able to get a call from him every couple weeks and just talk soccer, just put the world aside for 20 minutes and just talk soccer. And I know I've been going on here now for almost 45 minutes, but I really do appreciate everything y'all have done for this show. We continue to grow. We continue to get new listeners. We continue to meet people at Fire games, even people in the Fire organization who are like, oh yeah, I've heard about your podcast. And I'm like, oh, is that a good thing or a bad thing? But I'll take any press as good press, right? So with that, thank you especially to our listeners. Again, part 2 of our big holiday wrap-up is going to come out very shortly, hopefully within the next 24 hours of this one being published. So make sure you like, subscribe, rate, review, follow, do anything you need to do. Reach out to me on social media at Glasshouse Soccer. Email me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com. Happy to continue the conversation offline. And as always, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, let's go Fire.